Hey there, we're going to go over the importance of neighbor knocking in this video, and that is when you are knocking the neighbors of a recently signed full replacement service, or if you discover that there's been hail damage sustained to that block. We're also going to show you what is called the six-pack method and how doing that can allow your neighbor knocking to be organic instead of forcing you to have to do what's called cold knocking. And we will go over the differences between what is organic and what is cold knocking. Neighbor knocking is when you've discovered hail damage to a particular property that you've inspected, and you go to knock the neighbors across the street and on either side of the property. So that way you could tell them, hey, hail damage has been discovered. Would you like us to check you out? Now, that's the very basic definition. Neighbor knocking is also when you've signed up a particular homeowner for service, but you go to the neighbors and let them know there's going to be activity from our company in that neighborhood for the next couple of weeks. And if they have any concerns about what they're seeing or their own property or the noise or anything else, that they can contact you and you are the point of contact for them. Now, we have found the best way to execute neighbor knocks is what's called very widely in our industry as the six-pack method. The six-pack method is viewing that block, including the homeowner that you just signed up for service or just discovered that there's damage, as a six-pack of bottles. So the neighbor that you just signed is bottle number 1. To the left and to the right of that home, those neighbors are neighbors number 2 and neighbors number 3. The 3 closest houses directly across the street are bottles 4, 5, and 6. So that is the six-pack method. It's knocking the neighbors on both sides of the house that you're going to be doing service or just found where there's damage, and knocking the neighbors directly across the street. Executing the six-pack method allows you to organically knock those neighbors' doors. And there is a difference between organically door knocking and cold door knocking. Organic knocking is knocking on a neighbor's door with a specific reason to contact that person without actually trying to sell them anything. Cold knocking is when you knock on the neighbor's door and the only reason you have to do so is to try and sell them something. So we're going to take some time in this video to show different ways that you can make sure that your neighbor knocking is organic and feels a lot more comfortable and doesn't feel like you're just trying to make a hard sell. So here's some simplified steps that you can take after you've discovered a property has hail damage and you go to knock the neighbors. Step 1 is to obviously knock on the neighbor's door. Step 2 is to introduce yourself and make sure you have your business card ready. Let them know that you just performed an inspection of one of their neighbors. Make sure you use that property owner's name so they know who you're talking about. Then explain to them that they may have the same hail damage and if they were aware of that. If they say no, then let them know that you will be in the area quite often because you're working with one of their neighbors and that you can at any time jump on the roof and take 20 minutes just to see if they sustain the same damage or if they're fine. If they say yes, they are aware of the damage they've sustained, ask them if they've been taken care of as far as their repairs, because if not, they now have your card. Another way to make that knock organic is you tell that neighbor that you're working with said homeowner and you are working with his insurance company and you two are trying to figure out a date of loss, which is the date the hailstorm came through and did the damage. Let the neighbor know that you would like their help, and if they can remember a hailstorm in the last 2 or 3 years that might have done some damage to the roof. This way, you've now knocked on their door to help you help one of their neighbors, and through conversation, they may just ask you to check them out as well. If that neighbor does say, yeah, can you please check out the roof, or calls you at a later time and says, you know what, I've thought about it, I'd like you to check out the roof, make sure you add their information into Nimbus as a new contact and schedule that appointment as well. Now, if you're executing your neighbor knocking after you have a contract signed by one of their neighbors, the initial property owner, then your neighbor knocking actually becomes far more organic, and here's some methods that you can perform that. Step 1 is to obviously knock on the door. Again, if they answer, provide your card right away and let them know that you are working with their neighbor, use their name, and said homeowner is going to be having their roof replaced. And if there's any issues, say the day of production or when materials are being delivered or anything like that, you just wanted to make sure that those neighbors have somebody to call if there's a problem. If nobody answers the door, make sure you leave your business card behind, and then you can neighbor knock them a little bit later down the road in the production process. Now, once a homeowner signs a contract for a full replacement, there are steps in the production process that also creates great organic moments for you to knock on their neighbors' doors. One of those moments is when the supplier makes their delivery of the materials to the property that is getting service. A lot of times when there's already activity going on in their neighborhood, neighbors will actually take notice of it. So if there's a large truck with a big boom throwing up materials on a roof, they're going to be able to see that. They're going to hear the truck, they're going to be hearing the activity, and they're going to want to know what's going on. So if you haven't knocked the neighbors yet, or you did and nobody was home, when the supplier is delivering that material, that is a great time to knock on people's doors, let them know that activity is going on, and that if there's any problems, again, make sure they reach out to you. Another great organic moment to knock neighbors, if you haven't done so by then, is the day of production. So when the crew shows up early in the morning, if by that point you still haven't reached one or two of his neighbors, then that's a perfect opportunity to say, hey, I'm sorry, for the next day or maybe 2 days, it's going to be a little noisy over here. If you have any trash blown into your yard, please let me know. We are really good about cleaning up neighbors' properties as well if it's a windy day. But if you see anything that you need to have addressed, please let me know. And that's the very definition of an organic neighbor knock, because you're not trying to sell anything. You're just trying to give them a point of contact if there's a problem in their neighborhood. So again, make sure you take some time to practice your neighbor knocks and your approaches and your different organic styles, because your confidence is going to help you execute them a lot more organically. And it'll help you as a professional feel better about them as well. And if you execute your neighbor knocking properly and organically, it will actually add to our perception of value, because then it's showing the neighbors of the person you just signed up that you care about not only that property that you're servicing, but you care about the entire neighborhood. And don't forget, if you want some additional help practicing your neighbor knocking, then make sure you reach out to your sales coach, because that's what they're there for.